Words have power, the power to heal, the power to inspire, and the power to destroy. Sometimes the most devastating words are the ones never meant to be heard. The careless remarks, the thoughtless cruelty, the truth spoken when we think no one is listening. This is the story of 3 words that shattered a heart. She's nothing. 3 words spoken by a duke about the woman he'd promised to marry. 3 words she was never meant to hear. But she did. And everything changed. This is not a story about love at first sight. It's a story about love carefully built, word by word, gesture by gesture, only to be demolished in a single thoughtless moment. It's about Eleanor Ashford, who spent 6 months falling in love with a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient solution to a problem. And it's about Duke Adrien Blackthorne, who didn't realize what he had until his own words destroyed it. By the time he understood his mistake, it might already be too late. Some words, once spoken, can never be taken back. Some wounds, once inflicted, never fully heal. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how 3 words could destroy everything, we need to go back 6 months. Back to a spring morning when Eleanor Ashford received a letter that would change her life. A letter from Duke Adrien Blackthorne, requesting permission to court her. Eleanor had never met the Duke, had no idea why he'd chosen her, but she knew what everyone in London society knew. Adrien Blackthorne was wealthy, powerful, and devastatingly handsome. He was also grieving. His fiancée, Lady Catherine, had died a year ago. Society whispered that he'd never love again, that any woman who married him would always be second to a ghost. Eleanor almost declined the courtship. She was 24, considered a spinster by society's standards. She'd had her chances at marriage and turned them down. She had no fortune, no particular beauty, nothing that would attract a duke. So why was Adrien Blackthorne interested in her? The answer, she would discover, was brutally simple. He wasn't. Interested, that is. Eleanor was convenient, appropriate enough to satisfy his family's demands that he remarry, unremarkable enough that she wouldn't try to replace Catherine in his heart. In other words, she was safe, forgettable, nothing. And Adrien Blackthorne had no idea she would turn out to be everything. Today we're going to tell you what happened during those 6 months. How Eleanor fell in love slowly, carefully, protecting her heart even as it opened. How Adrien went through the motions of courtship, telling himself it was just duty, just obligation, even as something deeper took root. How they built something real without either of them fully acknowledging it. And how one overheard conversation, 3 careless words spoken in a moment of frustration, shattered everything they'd built. This is a story about the words we speak when we think no one is listening, and the price we pay when someone does. Let's begin. But before we start, you need to understand something about Eleanor Ashford. She'd spent her entire life being overlooked. She was the middle daughter of a minor baron, not the beauty like her older sister, not the charming one like her younger sister, just Eleanor. Practical, intelligent, useful. She'd helped her mother manage the household, educated her younger siblings, nursed her father through his final illness. She'd done everything right, been everything she was supposed to be, and still she was invisible. Men looked past her to her prettier sisters. Women sought her help, but never her friendship. Eleanor had accepted this, made peace with it, until Adrien Blackthorne asked to court her, until for the first time in her life someone chose her first. Adrien Blackthorne was 32 years old when he decided it was time to marry again. Not because he wanted to, not because he'd moved on from Catherine's death, but because his family was pressuring him. His mother needed grandchildren. His estate needed an heir. Society expected him to continue the Blackthorne line. So Adrien did what he always did. He approached marriage as a practical matter. He made a list of requirements. The woman had to be respectable, intelligent enough to manage a household, pleasant enough that living with her wouldn't be torture, and most importantly, she had to understand she'd never be Catherine. She had to accept second place. Eleanor Ashford fit the requirements perfectly. She was respectable, daughter of a baron, impeccable reputation. She was intelligent. He'd made discreet inquiries and everyone praised her competence. She was pleasant, no scandals, no dramatic temperament. And crucially, she was unremarkable enough that she wouldn't try to compete with Catherine's memory. Adrien sent his letter requesting permission to court her. He expected her to accept immediately. What woman wouldn't want to be a duchess? But Eleanor's response surprised him. She agreed to the courtship but requested they take it slowly. Get to know each other properly before making any commitments. Adrien was intrigued despite himself. Most women were eager to rush him to the altar. Their first meeting was in the Ashford family drawing room. Eleanor wore a simple grey dress. Her dark hair was pulled back severely. She wore no jewellery. She looked exactly as Adrien expected. Plain, unremarkable, appropriate. But when she spoke, something shifted. Her voice was warm, intelligent. Her eyes, when she actually met his gaze, were a striking green, and when she smiled at something he said, her entire face transformed. For just a moment, Adrien saw beauty. Then she composed herself and the moment passed, but it stayed with him, that flash of something more beneath the careful, controlled surface. It made him curious, and Adrien hadn't been curious about anything in a very long time. They began courting according to society's rules, supervised walks in the park, chaperoned visits to museums, dinners with Eleanor's family present. It was all very proper, very correct, and surprisingly, pleasant. Eleanor wasn't like other women Adrien had courted before Catherine. She didn't simper or flatter. She didn't try to impress him with accomplishments or beauty. She was simply herself. She asked him thoughtful questions about his estates, his work in Parliament, his interests. She listened to his answers with genuine attention, and when she disagreed with him, which she did frequently, she did so with such logical arguments that Adrien found himself enjoying the debate. After 2 months of courtship, Adrien's mother asked him how things were progressing. "Well enough," Adrien answered. "Eleanor is suitable, intelligent, easy to be around." His mother studied him. "But do you love her?" Adrien's expression closed. "Mother, you know I can't love again, not after Catherine, but Eleanor understands that. She's not expecting love. She's practical." The dowager frowned. "Adrien, that's not fair to her. Every woman deserves to be loved. Eleanor might seem practical, but she has feelings. Don't hurt her by giving her false hope, or worse, by treating her as merely convenient." Adrien dismissed the concern. "Eleanor knows what this is. We've been honest with each other." But had they been honest? Adrien had told Eleanor he was still grieving Catherine, that he couldn't offer her a love match. Eleanor had said she understood, that she wasn't expecting romantic love, that a respectful partnership would be enough. They'd both spoken these words. Both agreed to these terms, but neither had been entirely honest about what was really happening. Because despite his intentions, Adrien was starting to feel something, starting to look forward to seeing Eleanor, starting to notice little things, how she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, how she laughed, really laughed when something genuinely amused her, how she blushed when he complimented her. Adrien told himself it was just comfort, familiarity, nothing more. And Eleanor? Eleanor was falling in love. She'd tried not to, had told herself this was just a practical arrangement, that she shouldn't expect more. But how could she not fall for Adrien? He was thoughtful, bringing her books he thought she'd enjoy. He was interesting, sharing his work in Parliament, actually valuing her opinions. He was kind, remembering small details about her life, asking after her family. He made her laugh, made her feel seen for the first time in her life. And sometimes, just sometimes, when he looked at her, she saw something in his eyes that made her hope. Maybe he was falling too. Maybe this could become something real. She was wrong, but she wouldn't discover that for 4 more months. By month 4 they were engaged. Adrien had proposed formally and Eleanor had accepted. The wedding was set for 3 months later. Eleanor's family was thrilled. Her mother cried with joy. Her sisters were envious but happy for her. Eleanor herself felt conflicted. She loved Adrien, loved him desperately. But he'd never said he loved her. He was affectionate, yes, attentive, but there was always a distance. A part of himself he held back. Eleanor told herself it was enough, that love would grow after marriage, that she just needed to be patient. She ignored the small voice inside that whispered, "What if he never loves you? What if you're always second? What if you're always nothing?" During their engagement, Adrien took Eleanor to meet his extended family. His mother, the Dowager Duchess, was polite but cool. His sister Margaret was openly skeptical. "She's very plain," Margaret said to Adrien when Eleanor was out of earshot. Or so Margaret thought. Eleanor was actually in the next room arranging flowers and heard every word. Adrien's response: "That's rather the point, Margaret. I need someone undemanding, someone who won't try to replace Catherine." Margaret's laugh was sharp. "Well, she certainly couldn't. Catherine was extraordinary. This girl is adequate." Eleanor's hands stilled on the flowers. She felt each word like a slap. But worse was coming. Adrien's next words would haunt her for months. "Eleanor understands her place," Adrien said calmly. "She knows this is a practical arrangement. She's not expecting grand passion. She's content with what I can offer." Margaret's voice was curious. "And what can you offer her? Besides the title and money, I mean." There was a pause. Then Adrien spoke, and his words were casual, careless, devastating. "Respect, comfort, a good life. But Margaret, let's be honest. Eleanor is nothing like Catherine. She's pleasant enough, but there's no real depth there. No fire. She's convenient, safe. She's nothing that could ever hurt me the way losing Catherine did. And that's exactly what I need." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Margaret spoke, her voice troubled. "Adrien, that's cruel." But Adrien didn't seem to realize the cruelty. "It's realistic. Margaret, I'm never going to love again, not the way I loved Catherine. Eleanor is a practical choice. She's nothing I need to protect my heart from, because there's nothing there to capture it in the first place." And there it was, the word that would change everything: nothing. Eleanor stood frozen in the next room, a rose stem cutting into her palm as she gripped it too tightly. Blood welled, but she barely noticed. She's nothing. That's what Adrien thought of her after 6 months of courtship, after she'd fallen completely, hopelessly in love with him. She was nothing. Just a convenient placeholder, a woman so unremarkable she couldn't even threaten his grief. Eleanor carefully set down the flowers. Her hands were shaking. She felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in. She needed to leave, needed to get out before Adrien and Margaret came back and found her there, found her crying over words she was never meant to hear. Eleanor slipped out of the room, down the servants' corridor, and out to the gardens. She walked blindly until she found a secluded bench behind the hedge maze, and then, finally alone, she let herself cry. Great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. She'd been a fool, such a fool. She'd thought Adrien was starting to care for her, thought she saw affection in his eyes, but it had all been her imagination, her desperate hope. He'd never cared, never would. Eleanor didn't know how long she sat there crying. Eventually the tears stopped. She felt hollow, empty. She stared at her hands, at the blood from the rose thorn, dried now. And she thought about her options. She could break the engagement, cause a scandal, humiliate both families, but that would destroy her reputation. She'd never marry anyone else. Her family needed this alliance. Her father had debts the Blackthorn connection would help resolve. Breaking the engagement was selfish, impossible. So what then? Marry Adrien knowing he saw her as nothing? Spend her life desperately loving a man who would never love her back, who saw her as merely convenient? The thought was unbearable. But as Eleanor sat there, something inside her shifted. From pain to anger. Who was Adrien Blackthorn to decide she was nothing? To dismiss her as having no depth, no fire? He didn't know her. Not really. She'd been careful during their courtship. Guarded. Showing him only the safe, practical parts of herself. Because she was afraid. Afraid that if she showed him who she really was, passionate, opinionated, ambitious, he'd reject her. So she'd made herself small, unremarkable. And now he saw her exactly as she'd presented herself, as nothing. Well, maybe it was time to change that. Maybe it was time Adrien Blackthorn learned exactly who Eleanor Ashford really was. And then he could decide if she was still nothing. Eleanor stood, smoothed her dress, and walked back to the house. She found Adrien in the library. He looked up with a smile. "There you are, I was looking for you. Did you finish with the flowers?" Eleanor met his eyes steadily. "Yes, they're arranged beautifully. Adrien, I need to speak with you about our wedding plans." Adrien gestured to a chair. So, of course, what's on your mind? Eleanor didn't sit. She stood before him, her posture perfect, her voice calm. I've been thinking about what kind of duchess I want to be, and I realize I've been unclear about my expectations. I'd like to discuss them with you now. Adrien looked slightly surprised but nodded. All right, what expectations? Eleanor took a breath. I don't want to be a duchess who simply manages your household and produces heirs. I want to be actively involved in the estate management. I want access to the account books. I want to implement reforms for the workers. I also want to be involved in your political work. I have opinions on the issues before Parliament, and I intend to share them with you regularly. Additionally, I want to continue my education. I'd like to hire tutors in subjects I haven't studied, and I want to travel. I've never left England. I want to see the world. She paused. These are not requests, Adrien. These are conditions of our marriage. Can you accept them? Adrien stared at her. This was not the meek, accommodating Eleanor he'd been courting. This was someone else entirely, someone confident, assertive, demanding. Eleanor, this is rather sudden. Where is this coming from? Eleanor's smile was cool. It's coming from 6 months of reflection about what kind of life I want. I've been too passive, too accepting, too willing to mold myself to others' expectations. That ends now. I will be your wife, Adrien. I will fulfill my duties. But I will not be merely convenient. I will not be unremarkable. I will be a partner, an equal. Or I will be nothing. She said the word deliberately, watching to see if he recognized it, if he understood. He didn't. He just looked confused. Eleanor, I don't understand. Have I done something to upset you? Adrien's confusion was genuine. He truly had no idea she'd overheard him. Eleanor felt a flash of something. Hurt? Anger? Both? You've done nothing, Adrien, except help me realize I've been settling, accepting less than I deserve. I'm correcting that now. Adrien stood, crossing to her. Eleanor, you're being cryptic. If something is wrong, please just tell me directly. Eleanor met his eyes. What's wrong is that I've spent 6 months being what I thought you wanted, and I've realized that's not what I want. So either you accept me as I truly am, ambitious, opinionated, demanding, or we end this engagement now. Choose. Adrien was stunned. This was not how he'd expected this conversation to go. He studied Eleanor's face, seeing determination there, fire, exactly what he'd told Margaret she lacked. Where did this come from? You've never mentioned any of this before. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. Because I was afraid you'd reject me if I did, but I've decided I'd rather be rejected for who I am than accepted for a version of myself that doesn't exist. Adrien felt off balance. I'm not rejecting you. I'm just surprised. This is very different from the woman I've been courting. Eleanor's voice was quiet. No, Adrien, this is exactly the woman you've been courting. You just never bothered to look deep enough to see her. The word stung. Adrien felt defensive. That's not fair. I've spent 6 months getting to know you. Eleanor shook her head. You've spent 6 months deciding I'm suitable. That's different from knowing me. Tell me, Adrien, what's my favorite book? What do I dream about? What makes me angry? What am I afraid of? Adrien opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know. He'd never asked. Eleanor saw his realization. Exactly. You don't know me. You know the version I showed you, the safe, practical, unremarkable version. But that's not who I am. And I'm done pretending it is. She turned toward the door. Think about what I've said. Decide if you can accept the real me. I'll wait for your answer. After Eleanor left, Adrien sat in stunned silence. What had just happened? His calm, accommodating fiancée had just issued him an ultimatum, had demanded things no woman had ever demanded from him. Partnership, equality, recognition. It was unsettling, but also, if he was honest, intriguing. This Eleanor, fierce, passionate, unapologetic, was fascinating, so different from the woman he'd thought he was marrying. Adrien found himself wondering, who was Eleanor Ashford really, and why had she been hiding herself? He needed answers. It's not funny, Adrien said irritably. Christopher wiped his eyes. Oh, it's hilarious. Adrien, you've been courting this woman for 6 months, thinking she was meek and simple, and now you're discovering she's neither. That's comedy. Adrien scowled. She completely blindsided me. Christopher's expression turned serious. Or maybe you completely underestimated her. Adrien, did you ever actually try to know Eleanor? Or did you just check boxes on your requirements list? The words hit too close to home. Adrien looked away. I made sure we were compatible. Christopher shook his head. Compatible for what? For her to be a convenient placeholder? A woman who won't demand too much of your carefully guarded heart? Adrien's jaw tightened. What are you implying? Christopher leaned against the billiard table. I'm saying you chose Eleanor because you thought she was safe. Unremarkable enough that you wouldn't fall for her. Simple enough that she wouldn't challenge you. Someone you could marry without risking your heart. And now you're discovering she's none of those things. She's complex, ambitious, challenging. And you have to decide, do you actually want to know this woman? Or do you want the fantasy version you created? Adrien felt anger flash. I never created a fantasy. Eleanor presented herself as practical and accommodating. Christopher's voice was gentle. Did she? Or did you just see what you wanted to see? Adrien had no answer. That night, Adrien couldn't sleep. Christopher's words haunted him. Had he been seeing only what he wanted to see? Had he dismissed Eleanor as simple and unremarkable because that's what he needed her to be? Adrien thought back over the past 6 months, remembered moments he'd dismissed at the time. Eleanor passionately defending a point during a political discussion, then backing down when he disagreed. Eleanor starting to share an opinion about estate management, then trailing off when he looked distracted. Eleanor beginning to tell him about a book she loved, then changing the subject when he didn't seem interested. How many times had Eleanor tried to show him who she really was, only to retreat when he didn't pay attention? Adrien felt sick. Christopher was right. Adrien had been so focused on protecting his heart, on making sure Eleanor couldn't hurt him the way losing Catherine had, that he'd never actually tried to know her. He'd categorized her as suitable and stopped looking deeper. And Eleanor, perceptive enough to sense his disinterest, had hidden herself, had become what she thought he wanted. Until today. Until something had changed. What had changed? Adrien replayed their conversation. Eleanor's words, I'd rather be rejected for who I am than accepted for a version of myself that doesn't exist. Something had happened. Something had made her stop hiding. But what? Adrien needed to find out, needed to understand, needed to fix this, whatever this was. The next morning, Adrien called on Eleanor. She received him in her family's drawing room, perfectly composed. Adrien, I wasn't expecting you. Adrien sat across from her. Eleanor, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about how I don't really know you. You're right, I don't, and I'd like to change that. Eleanor's expression was unreadable. Why? What difference does it make? We're already engaged. The wedding is in 3 months. Knowing me better doesn't change anything. Adrien leaned forward. It changes everything, Eleanor. I don't want to marry a stranger. I don't want to spend my life with someone I've never truly seen, so please, tell me. Who are you, really? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then, who am I? I'm someone who's been invisible her entire life. I'm the daughter no one noticed, the sister everyone overlooked, the woman men looked past to find someone prettier, more charming, more interesting. I learned early that being myself, opinionated, passionate, ambitious, made people uncomfortable. So I learned to hide, to be useful instead of interesting, practical instead of passionate. And when you started courting me, I thought, maybe this time it would be different. Maybe you actually saw me, but I was wrong. You saw exactly what everyone else sees. Nothing remarkable, nothing special, just nothing. Her voice broke on the last word. Adrien felt like he'd been punched. Eleanor, I never said— You didn't have to say it to me, Eleanor interrupted. I heard you say it to Margaret. Yesterday. I was in the next room. I heard everything. Adrien's blood ran cold. What did you hear? Eleanor's eyes blazed. I heard you tell your sister that I'm nothing like Catherine, that there's no depth to me, no fire, that I'm convenient, safe, nothing that could ever hurt you. You said I'm nothing, Adrien. The word you used, nothing. Adrien felt the floor drop out from under him. She'd heard. God, she'd heard his worst, most careless words. Words that were cruel and untrue, and spoken without thinking. He stood abruptly. Eleanor, I didn't mean— Yes, you did, Eleanor said quietly. You meant every word. And the worst part is you were right. I made myself nothing. I hid everything interesting about me because I was afraid you'd reject it. So you saw exactly what I showed you. A bland, unremarkable woman who wouldn't inconvenience you or challenge you or make you feel anything. I became nothing to protect myself. And you chose me because that's exactly what you wanted. So we both got what we deserved. Adrien felt panic rising. Eleanor, please, let me explain. Those words, I was being defensive with Margaret. She was criticizing my choice to marry you. And I said things I didn't mean. Things that were cruel and wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Eleanor stood. Adrien, your apology doesn't change the fundamental truth. You don't know me. You don't want to know me. You want a convenient wife who won't disturb your carefully maintained grief, someone who'll let you keep loving a ghost without demanding you make room for a living person. I can't be that woman anymore, I won't. Adrien grabbed her hand desperately. Then don't be, Eleanor. You asked me yesterday if I could accept the real you. The answer is yes. I want to know you, the real you, the passionate, opinionated, ambitious woman you've been hiding. Please, give me a chance to know her, to know you. Eleanor pulled her hand away. Why? So you can decide if I'm worth keeping after all? No, thank you. Adrien's voice was raw. Then I won't reject her. Eleanor, I was wrong, catastrophically wrong, about you, about what I wanted, about everything. And I know words are cheap. I know I can't just apologize and expect you to forgive me. But if you'll give me 3 months, just 3 months, I'll prove through actions that I see you now, that I value you, that you're not nothing. You're everything I didn't know I needed. The words hung between them. Eleanor wiped her eyes. 1 month? Adrien blinked. What? Eleanor's voice was firm. I'll give you 1 month, 4 weeks to prove you mean what you're saying, to show me that you actually want to know me, not just the idea of me. After that, I'll decide about the wedding. Adrien nodded quickly. 1 month, agreed. Eleanor, I'll spend every day proving to you that I was wrong, that you're extraordinary, that I was a fool not to see it sooner. Eleanor's expression was guarded. Don't make promises you can't keep, Adrien. I don't want pretty words. I want genuine effort. I want you to actually listen when I talk, to ask questions about what I think, what I feel, what I dream about. I want you to see me as a person, not a convenient solution to your problems. Can you do that? Adrien met her eyes. Yes, I can, and I will. Eleanor nodded slowly. Then we'll try. 1 month. But Adrien, if you hurt me again, if you dismiss me again, I'm gone. Scandal or not. Do you understand? Adrien did. I understand. And so began the strangest month of Adrien's life. He approached getting to know Eleanor the way he approached everything else, systematically. He made lists of questions to ask her, topics to discuss, activities they could do together that might reveal who she really was. But Eleanor saw through his strategy immediately. On their first outing, a walk in Hyde Park, she stopped and turned to him. Adrien, you're treating this like a business negotiation. Stop planning conversations and just talk to me. Tell me something true about yourself, something you don't usually share. I'll do the same. Adrien was caught off guard. Like what? Eleanor's smile was challenging. Like what you're really afraid of. Adrien was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, I'm afraid of caring again, afraid of loving someone and losing them the way I lost Catherine. When she died, it nearly destroyed me. For months, I couldn't function, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I've spent the past year building walls around my heart because I never want to feel that pain again. And when I met you, when I started courting you, I told myself you were safe, that I'd never care enough to be hurt. It was cruel, deeply cruel. But it was also the only way I could contemplate marriage again, by making sure it would never really matter. Eleanor absorbed this. Thank you for being honest. Adrien looked at her. Your turn. What are you really afraid of? Eleanor's voice was soft. I'm afraid of being nothing, of going through my entire life without mattering to anyone, without being chosen first, without being seen. I've been invisible for so long that sometimes I wonder if there's anything there to see. If maybe everyone's right and I really am just ordinary, unremarkable, nothing worth noticing. Her voice broke. And when I heard you say I was nothing, it confirmed my worst fear. That even when someone chooses me, it's not really me they're choosing. It's just a convenient placeholder. Adrien stopped walking, turned to face her fully. Eleanor, look at me. She did. You are not nothing. You're brilliant, strong, brave enough to demand what you deserve. I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Eleanor's eyes searched his. Do you mean that? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? Adrien took her hands. I mean it. Eleanor, these past few days since you confronted me, I've been thinking constantly about all the moments I missed. All the times you tried to show me who you really are and I wasn't paying attention. I think about the time you started to tell me about your passion for astronomy, and I changed the subject because I wasn't interested. Or when you tried to discuss estate reforms, and I dismissed your ideas without really listening. Or when you played piano and I barely looked up from my newspaper. I was cruel without meaning to be, cruel through indifference. Tears slipped down Eleanor's cheeks. You remember all that? Adrien nodded. I've been replaying every conversation we've had, seeing them differently now, seeing all the ways you tried to connect and I shut you down. Eleanor, I'm ashamed of how I treated you. You deserved better. You deserved someone who saw you from the beginning. Eleanor wiped her eyes. Why didn't you? Why couldn't you see me? Adrien's voice was honest. Because I wasn't ready to. I was too busy protecting myself, too determined not to feel anything real, and you paid the price for my cowardice. Eleanor was quiet. Then, tell me about Catherine. Really tell me. Because she's still between us, isn't she? Adrien tensed. No one asked him about Catherine. They tiptoed around her memory, but Eleanor was looking at him with such openness, such genuine desire to understand, that he found himself wanting to answer. They sat on a park bench. Adrien took a breath. Catherine was light. She laughed easily, found joy in everything. She was the opposite of me in every way. Where I was serious, she was playful. Where I was cautious, she was adventurous. She balanced me, made me better. And when she died, sudden heart failure, no warning, it felt like all the light went out of the world. He paused. I didn't just lose her, I lost the person I was with her, the better version of myself. Eleanor listened carefully. And you're afraid that if you love someone else, you'll lose yourself again if they leave? Adrien nodded. Exactly. It's not even about betraying Catherine's memory, though I felt that too initially. It's about self-preservation. If I never love deeply again, I can never be hurt that deeply again. Eleanor's voice was gentle. But Adrien, you're already hurting. You've spent a year isolated, numb, going through the motions of life without really living. Is that really safer than risking pain? Or is it just a different kind of death? The words struck Adrien like lightning. She was right. He'd been so focused on avoiding pain that he'd avoided everything, including the possibility of happiness. I never thought of it that way, Adrien admitted. Eleanor smiled sadly. That's because you've been alone with your grief. You need someone to challenge your assumptions, to tell you uncomfortable truths, to pull you back into life. She paused. That could be me, Adrien, if you'd let it. But you have to actually let me in. Stop holding me at arm's length. Stop seeing me as safe or convenient or nothing. See me as a person who could matter to you, who could be a real partner, but that means risking your heart. And I don't think you're ready for that yet. Adrien felt panic. What if I want to be ready? What if I'm trying? Eleanor's eyes were sad. Trying isn't enough. You either are or you aren't. They sat in silence for a while. Then Adrien spoke, his voice raw. What if I am ready? What if meeting you, getting to know you, realizing I've been seeing you all wrong? What if that's what I needed to be ready to feel again? Eleanor looked at him. Then prove it. Not with words, Adrien, with actions. Show me I matter. Show me you see me. Show me that when you look at me you don't see nothing. You see someone worth knowing, worth choosing, worth loving eventually. Adrien took her hand. I will. Eleanor, I swear to you, I'll prove it. Give me the rest of this month. Let me show you who I can be when I'm actually paying attention, when I'm actually present, when I'm actually trying to deserve you. What followed was unlike any courtship Adrien had ever experienced. He stopped planning conversations and started listening, really listening. He asked Eleanor questions and actually absorbed her answers. He learned that her favorite book was a philosophy text on ethics, that she dreamed of reforming England's poor laws, that she was angry about women's lack of legal rights, that she was afraid of being forgotten, that she loved astronomy because it reminded her that human problems were small in the cosmic scale, that she played piano beautifully when she thought no one was listening, that she had a wicked sense of humor she hid from most people. Each discovery made Adrien realize how blind he'd been. One evening, Adrien attended a dinner at Eleanor's family home. After the meal, Eleanor's younger sister asked her to play piano. Eleanor demurred, as she always did in company, but Adrien spoke up. Please, Eleanor, I've never heard you play properly. I'd like to. Eleanor looked at him skeptically. You said before it wasn't really your interest. Adrien winced at the reminder of his past dismissiveness. I was wrong to say that. I'd very much like to hear you play now, if you're willing. Eleanor studied him, then nodded. She sat at the piano, and what came out was extraordinary. Not a simple drawing-room piece, but a complex Bach fugue played with technical brilliance and deep emotion. Adrien sat transfixed. This was not the playing of a competent amateur. This was the playing of someone who devoted years to mastering their craft. When Eleanor finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then Adrien stood and crossed to the piano. Eleanor, that was extraordinary. How did I not know you could play like that? Eleanor's smile was sad. You never asked, and when I tried to play for you before, you barely listened. Adrien felt shame burn through him. I'm sorry. I was a fool. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Yes, you were, but you're listening now, that's what matters. Adrien vowed to himself he would never stop listening. Never again. Adrien began taking Eleanor to places that mattered to her. Not the fashionable spots where society congregated, but the British Museum to see the astronomy exhibits, the Royal Society lectures on science and philosophy, the theatre to see plays she wanted to see, not just the popular ones, and he paid attention, discussed ideas with her, debated respectfully when they disagreed, valued her opinions even when they challenged his. Slowly, Eleanor began to relax, to trust that this change in Adrien was real, to show him more of herself. And as she did, Adrien found himself fascinated. This Eleanor, passionate, intellectual, funny, complex, was nothing like the woman he'd thought he was marrying. She was so much more. 2 weeks into their month, Adrien's mother invited them to dinner. The Dowager Duchess had heard about the change in Eleanor, about her newfound assertiveness. She was skeptical. During dinner, Eleanor spoke passionately about estate reform, about implementing better working conditions for labourers, education for their children, fair wages. The Dowager listened with growing concern. After Eleanor finished, the Dowager turned to Adrien. This is rather radical thinking, Adrien. Are you comfortable with Eleanor involving herself in estate matters? Adrien met his mother's eyes steadily. I'm more than comfortable. I'm grateful. Eleanor has insights I'd never considered. She's going to make an excellent duchess. The Dowager's eyebrows rose. That's quite different from what you said before. I believe you told Margaret that Eleanor was pleasant, but had no real depth. Adrien felt Eleanor stiffen beside him. He took her hand. I was wrong, Mother. Catastrophically wrong. I didn't know Eleanor. I never tried to know her. I made assumptions based on my own fears and prejudices. But I know her now, and she's extraordinary. After dinner, Adrien and Eleanor walked in the garden. Eleanor was quiet. Finally, Adrien spoke. What are you thinking? Eleanor looked at him. I'm thinking about how much has changed in 2 weeks, how different you are, how different we are together. Adrien nodded. I feel it too. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. When this month started, I thought I was doing this out of obligation, to fix my mistake, to prove I could be better, but that's not why I'm doing it anymore. Eleanor's breath caught. Why are you doing it? Adrien stopped walking, turned to face her. Because I'm falling in love with you. Not the idea of you, not the convenient version, the real you, the brilliant, passionate, challenging woman you've been showing me. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Adrien. He cupped her face gently. I know I don't deserve your love. I know I hurt you terribly. I know I called you nothing when you're everything. But Eleanor, if you'll have me, if you'll still marry me, I promise I'll spend every day for the rest of our lives proving you matter, proving I see you, proving you're not second to anyone, including Catherine's memory. Eleanor was crying now. You really mean it? This isn't just guilt or obligation. Adrien shook his head. It's love. Real, terrifying, consuming love. The kind I swore I'd never feel again. The kind I tried so hard to avoid. You broke through every wall I built, and I'm grateful. So grateful. Eleanor searched his eyes, seeing truth there, seeing love. I fell in love with you months ago, she admitted. Even when you were being blind and careless. Even when you hurt me. I fell in love with glimpses of the man you could be. And now, seeing you actually become that man. She laughed through tears. I love you so much it terrifies me. Adrien pulled her close. Then let's be terrified together. Let's build something real, something based on actually knowing each other, on choosing each other. Not out of convenience or obligation, but because we can't imagine being with anyone else. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him. Yes, yes, Adrien, I'll marry you. Not because I have to, because I want to. Adrien kissed her then. Not the chaste, formal kisses of their early courtship, but a real kiss, full of love and passion and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Eleanor laughed. We should probably head back before your mother sends a search party. Adrien grinned. Probably. But Eleanor, one more thing I need you to know. You're not nothing. You never were. You're everything. The depth, the fire, the brilliance I claimed you lacked, you had it all along. I was just too blind to see it, too afraid to look, but I see you now. And I'll never stop seeing you, never stop choosing you, never stop loving you. Eleanor smiled. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. The remaining 2 weeks of their month flew by. Adrien and Eleanor spent every possible moment together, learning each other's quirks and habits, sharing dreams and fears, building intimacy not just through grand gestures, but through small moments. The way Eleanor tilted her head when she was thinking, the way Adrien's eyes crinkled when he smiled genuinely, the way they could communicate with just a glance now. They were becoming partners in the truest sense. And while Catherine's memory would always be part of Adrien's past, Eleanor was his present, his future, the choice he made every day. Not because she was convenient, not because she was safe, but because she was extraordinary, and he finally had eyes to see it. But there was still one thing that needed to be addressed, one conversation they needed to have. 3 days before the wedding, Eleanor brought it up. They were in Adrien's library, and Eleanor had been quieter than usual. Finally, she spoke. Adrien, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Adrien set down his book. Of course. Anything. Eleanor took a breath. That day, when you told Margaret I was nothing, did you really believe it at the time? Adrien's first instinct was to say no, to reassure her, but she'd asked for honesty. He owed her that. Yes, he admitted quietly. At the time I believed it. Or I told myself I did. It was easier than admitting the truth. Eleanor's voice was steady. What truth? Adrien met her eyes. That I was already starting to care about you, that you were already breaking through my carefully maintained distance, and that terrified me. So I diminished you, told myself you were nothing special, nothing that could hurt me. It was a lie I needed to believe to feel safe. He paused. But Eleanor, Even as I said those words to Margaret, some part of me knew they weren't true. I'd seen glimpses of your intelligence, your humor, your passion. I ignored them because they didn't fit the narrative I needed. I'm not making excuses. What I said was cruel and wrong. But I want you to understand why I said it. Fear, pure fear. Eleanor nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest. I think I needed to hear that you actually believed it at the time. It helps me understand. Doesn't make it hurt less. But I understand. Adrien moved to sit beside her. Eleanor, I will regret those words for the rest of my life. They were the worst thing I've ever said about anyone, and they were about the woman I love. That's something I'll have to live with. But I promise you, I will spend our marriage making sure you never doubt that I see you now, that I know your worth, that you're everything to me. Eleanor leaned against him. I believe you. It's taken time, but I believe you. Adrien kissed her forehead. That's all I can ask. The wedding day arrived. Eleanor stood in her family's home wearing a gown of ivory silk, her mother's pearls at her throat. Her sister helped her with her veil. Are you nervous? Her sister asked. Eleanor smiled. No. For the first time in my life, I'm not nervous, I'm certain. Adrien sees me, really sees me, loves me for who I really am. That's all I've ever wanted. Her sister hugged her. He's lucky to have you. Eleanor's smile widened. We're lucky to have each other. It took us a while to figure that out, but we got there. They went to the church. Eleanor walked down the aisle on her father's arm, and at the altar, Adrien waited, looking at her with such love it took her breath away. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional vows spoken with genuine meaning. When the vicar asked if Adrien would take Eleanor as his wife, Adrien's voice rang clear. I will, now and always. When Eleanor said the same, her voice was steady and sure. They were pronounced husband and wife. Adrien kissed Eleanor with a tenderness that made several guests wipe away tears. The reception was joyful, but the most meaningful moment came during Adrien's toast. He stood before their guests and spoke from the heart. 6 months ago, I thought I knew what I wanted in a wife. I was wrong about everything. My wife is not what I expected. She's infinitely better. Adrien continued, his eyes never leaving Eleanor's. Eleanor is brilliant, passionate, ambitious, and challenging. She pushes me to be better, questions my assumptions, refuses to let me settle for less than I'm capable of. She's everything I didn't know I needed. And I'm the luckiest man alive because she chose me. Not because she had to, not because it was convenient, but because despite my mistakes, despite my blindness, despite everything I got wrong at the beginning, she gave me a chance to see her, really see her. And now that I have, I'll never look away. He raised his glass. To Eleanor, my wife, my partner, my everything. The guests applauded, moved by the raw honesty. What changed? Eleanor asked, though she knew the answer. Adrien met her eyes in the mirror. You changed. You refused to be what I expected. You demanded more. You challenged me. And in doing so, you woke me up, made me realize I was sleepwalking through life, avoiding pain by avoiding everything. You taught me that being safe isn't the same as being alive. Eleanor turned to face him. And you taught me that hiding isn't the same as protecting myself. That being seen, really seen, is worth the risk of rejection. We saved each other, Adrien. He pulled her close. We did, and we'll keep saving each other. Every day, for the rest of our lives. The next morning they woke tangled together. Eleanor laughed. We should probably get up. Your mother is expecting us for breakfast. Adrien groaned. Can't we just stay here forever? Eleanor kissed him. No, but we can come back here tonight, and every night after. Adrien smiled. True, Eleanor, can I ask you something? She nodded. When you overheard me that day, when I said you were nothing, what stopped you from ending the engagement immediately? Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Partly pragmatism. My family needed the alliance, but mostly stubborn hope. Some small part of me believed you were wrong, that I wasn't nothing, and I wanted to prove it. To you and to myself. I promise, Adrien said solemnly. No more hiding, no more pretending, honesty always. Eleanor squeezed his hand. And I promise the same. I'll never hide myself from you again. Never pretend to be less than I am. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if we disagree, I'll always be fully myself." Adrien pulled her close. "Good, because that's who I fell in love with. The real Eleanor, unfiltered, unguarded, extraordinary." They stayed there for a long moment, holding each other, building promises, building trust, building a foundation strong enough to weather whatever came. Because both of them knew, relationships weren't maintained through grand gestures. They were maintained through daily choices, daily honesty, daily love. At breakfast with the Dowager Duchess, Eleanor unveiled her first major initiative as the new Duchess of Ravenswood. "I've been reviewing the estate accounts," she said calmly, "and I've identified several areas where we can improve both worker welfare and productivity. I'd like to implement a profit-sharing system, establish a school for workers' children, and improve housing conditions." The Dowager's eyebrows rose. Adrien smiled. "Tell us more." Eleanor did, presenting a detailed plan she'd been developing for weeks. It was ambitious, progressive, and brilliantly argued. The Dowager listened with growing respect. When Eleanor finished, the Dowager nodded. "Well, it seems Ravenswood has acquired a formidable duchess." Eleanor smiled. "Thank you, Your Grace. I hope to make meaningful changes, to use my position for good." The Dowager looked at Adrien. "You chose well, my son, though it took you some time to realize it." Adrien took Eleanor's hand. "I did, and yes, it did, but we got there eventually." Eleanor's eyes glistened, Adrien acknowledging Catherine without diminishing Eleanor. It was a gift. Proof that he could hold both his past and his present without one negating the other. The Dowager stood. "Well, I'll leave you two to your plans. Eleanor, my dear, if you need any assistance navigating estate management, I'm here." After the Dowager left, Eleanor turned to Adrien. "Thank you." He looked confused. "For what?" Eleanor smiled. "For mentioning Catherine. For not pretending she never existed. For making space for both your grief and our love. That takes courage." Adrien kissed her hand. "You taught me that was possible. Before you, I thought I had to choose. Grief or love. Past or present. You showed me I could have both." The months that followed were busy. Eleanor threw herself into estate reforms. Adrien supported her publicly, defending her progressive ideas to skeptical peers. They worked together on parliamentary initiatives, hosted salons where intellectuals discussed social reform, used their combined influence to push for change. They weren't perfect, they argued sometimes, disagreed on approaches, but they argued honestly, listened to each other, found compromises, and through it all, they loved each other fiercely, chose each other daily. 1 year into their marriage, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. Adrien's joy was immediate and complete. "A child," he breathed, his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our child." Eleanor smiled. "Yes, ours. Adrien, I need to tell you something. When we first married, I was afraid of having children." Adrien looked concerned. "Why?" Eleanor took a breath. "Because I was afraid they'd love you and barely tolerate me, the way my own parents did. I was afraid I'd be nothing to them too, just another person who overlooked me." Adrien's expression broke. "Eleanor, no, never. You're going to be an extraordinary mother, and our children will adore you. How could they not? You're brilliant, passionate, loving, everything any child could want." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "You really believe that?" Adrien cupped her face. "I know it. Just like I know they'll be lucky to have you. Just like I'm lucky to have you." The pregnancy progressed. Eleanor continued her work almost until the end, finally relenting only when Adrien begged her to rest. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, screaming and perfect. Adrien held her with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mother." Eleanor, exhausted but glowing, smiled. "What should we name her?" Adrien looked at Eleanor. "You choose. You've given me everything. This choice is yours." Eleanor thought for a moment. Then, "Catherine Eleanor." Catherine for the woman you loved first. Eleanor because she's mine too. Both of us in her name. Past and present together. Adrien kissed her deeply. Perfect. You're perfect. As they sat together, their daughter sleeping between them, Adrien spoke quietly. Eleanor, do you remember that day? When you overheard me tell Margaret you were nothing? Eleanor nodded. Of course. How could I forget? Adrien's voice was rough with emotion. I think about it often. How close I came to losing you, to never knowing you, to spending my life with a stranger, oblivious to the extraordinary woman I'd dismissed. It terrifies me. Eleanor took his hand. But that's not what happened. You woke up, you saw me, you chose me, that's what matters. Adrien shook his head. Only because you demanded it. You refused to be dismissed. You saved us both, Eleanor. Eleanor smiled. Then we saved each other. You taught me I was worth fighting for. That being seen was worth the risk. And I taught you that love is worth risking pain for. That being alive means being vulnerable. We balanced each other. Adrien looked at their daughter. And now we teach her. Teach her that she's never nothing, that she matters, that she should demand to be seen and heard and valued, that she should never settle for less than she deserves. Eleanor's eyes glistened. Yes, we break the cycle. No more invisible children, no more overlooked daughters. Catherine Eleanor will know every day of her life that she's extraordinary, just because she exists. Adrien kissed them both. Promise. 5 years later, Adrien and Eleanor stood in Ravenswood's library. They'd just put their 3 children to bed, Catherine Eleanor, now 5, and twin boys, Thomas and William. Eleanor was reading through estate reports. Adrien was pretending to read but actually watching his wife. She looked up. What? Adrien smiled. Just thinking about how much has changed. How different our lives are from what I expected. Eleanor set down her papers. Better or worse? Adrien's laugh was immediate. Better, infinitely better. Eleanor, you've made me happier than I ever thought possible, than I ever thought I deserved. Eleanor crossed to him. You deserve it. We both do. We fought for this. Adrien pulled her onto his lap. Do you ever regret it, marrying me after everything I put you through at the beginning? Eleanor considered. Sometimes I regret how much it hurt, how long I spent hiding myself, but regret marrying you? Never. Because, Adrien, you became the man I needed. Not immediately, not easily, but you got there. You chose growth over comfort, vulnerability over safety, love over fear. That's worth everything we went through. Adrien kissed her. I love you. Because you know me, Eleanor said softly. You knew Catherine, but you know me. Every flaw, every fear, every dream, and you love me anyway. Adrien nodded. Exactly. Our love is built on honesty, on seeing each other completely. That's what makes it unshakable. Eleanor rested her head on his shoulder. Do you still think about that day, when I overheard you? Adrien's arms tightened. Yes, it's a reminder of how easily I could have lost you, of how my careless words nearly destroyed the best thing in my life. I never want to forget that, never want to take you for granted. Eleanor smiled. You won't. I won't let you. Adrien laughed. No, you won't. Thank God. Eleanor continued. If I'd never heard those words, I might have married you still hiding myself, still being that safe, convenient woman you thought you wanted. We would have had a civil, pleasant, empty marriage. But because I heard them, because I was forced to confront your perception of me, I found the courage to show you who I really am. And you found the courage to see me. So yes, I'm grateful not for the pain, but for what the pain made possible. Adrien's eyes glistened. You're extraordinary. Do you know that? To find gratitude in one of the worst moments of your life? Eleanor smiled. I learned it from you. You turned your grief over Catherine into a capacity for deeper love. We're both alchemists. Adrien laughed. Alchemists of pain into growth? Eleanor nodded. Exactly. We take our wounds and transform them, not by denying them or pretending they don't hurt, but by using them to become better, Kinder, more honest, more ourselves. Adrien kissed her forehead. When did you get so wise? Eleanor's eyes sparkled. I've always been wise. You just didn't notice. Adrien groaned. I deserved that. Eleanor grinned. You did. But I forgive you. I've forgiven you for a long time, actually. The question is, have you forgiven yourself? Adrien was quiet. I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others. But knowing you're happy, that we're happy together, it helps. Eleanor took his face in her hands. Adrien Blackthorne, listen to me. You made a mistake, a big one, but you fixed it, you changed. You became the man I needed you to be. The man our children need you to be. That's all anyone can ask. Growth, effort, love. You've given me all three. So please forgive yourself. Let go of the guilt. We've built something beautiful. Don't let old pain diminish present joy. Adrien's voice was hoarse. How do you always know exactly what I need to hear? Eleanor smiled. Because I see you, Adrien. The way you see me, completely, honestly, lovingly. That's our gift to each other, being truly seen. Adrien held her close. I love you, Eleanor Blackthorne, my wife, my partner, my everything. Years continued to pass. Adrien and Eleanor grew old together. Their children grew up strong and confident, raised to believe they mattered, that their voices deserved to be heard. Catherine Eleanor became a physician, breaking barriers for women in medicine. The twins became reformers, continuing their parents' work. The Ravenswood estates became models of progressive management. Adrien served in Parliament with Eleanor's counsel, pushing for social reform. They wrote their story not in grand gestures but in daily choices, daily honesty, daily love. And when Adrien was 70 and Eleanor 67, when they sat in their garden watching grandchildren play, Adrien still looked at her with wonder. What are you thinking? Eleanor asked, because she still asked after 45 years of marriage. Adrien smiled. I'm thinking about the day you walked into my study and demanded I see you. Told me you'd rather be rejected for who you really are than accepted for a lie. You changed my life that day. Eleanor took his hand. You changed mine when you chose to actually look, to actually listen, to actually care. Adrien raised her hand to his lips. Best decision I ever made. Eleanor leaned against him. Second best. First was admitting you were wrong about me being nothing. Adrien laughed. True. God, I was such a fool. Eleanor smiled. You were. But you got better. As the sun set over Ravenswood, painting the sky in oranges and purples, Adrien held his wife close. Eleanor, if you could go back, if you could change that day, make it so you never heard those words, would you? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then, no, I wouldn't change it, because those words, as much as they hurt, led us here, to this life, this love, these children and grandchildren, to 45 years of genuine partnership. Every moment of pain was worth every moment of this. Adrien kissed her temple. Even when I called you nothing. Eleanor looked up at him, especially then, because look how thoroughly you've spent our marriage proving that wrong. And that perhaps is the real end of this story, not in the dramatic moment when Eleanor overheard Adrien's cruel words, not even in the month when he learned to see her, but in the decades that followed, in the daily choices to see each other, to value each other, to love each other honestly, in the life they built together, brick by brick, word by word, day by day, a life where Eleanor was never nothing, where she was seen, valued, loved completely, where Adrien learned that vulnerability is strength, that love is worth risking pain, that the person you almost dismiss might be the person who saves you. They taught their children these lessons, who taught their grandchildren, who would teach their great-grandchildren. This is Crown of Secrets, where we tell stories of words that wound and loves that heal, where every careless phrase has consequences, where every act of courage matters. Eleanor and Adrien's story reminds us that we never really know people until we choose to see them. That assumptions blind us to extraordinary possibility, that the person we dismiss as nothing might be everything we need, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives, the moments that devastate us, become the catalysts for our greatest transformation. Eleanor heard 3 words that shattered her heart. She's nothing. Those words changed everything, but not in the way they were intended. Instead of accepting them, Eleanor rejected them. She demanded to be seen, refused to be dismissed, forced Adrien to confront his own blindness, and in doing so, she saved them both. She saved herself from a lifetime of hiding, and she saved Adrien from a lifetime of emotional numbness, of going through the motions without really living. Sometimes the words we're never meant to hear are the words we most need to hear, not because they're true, but because they force us to prove they're not. Eleanor spent years proving she wasn't nothing, but she was really proving it to herself. Adrien already knew somewhere deep down. He just needed to admit it. If you found yourself in this story, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, called nothing, remember Eleanor's courage. She didn't accept the label. She fought it, demanded better, and found love on the other side of pain. If you found yourself in Adrien, if you've ever been blind to someone's value, if you've ever dismissed someone you should have cherished, remember his growth. It's never too late to open your eyes. Never too late to see someone truly. Never too late to say, I was wrong. You're everything. The words we speak when we think no one is listening have power. Use that power wisely. Speak with care. And when you inevitably fail, do what Adrien did. Own it. Change. Grow.